Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Create Your Best Chapter podcast. My name is Vera Ilnyckyj. I'm a life and career coach, and I help women step confidently into the next and best chapter of their life. And in my conversations on my podcast, I have really amazing women come on who share their story of creating next chapters and how they're inspiring and motivating their communities and the people in their world. And today I'm really excited to have my friend Dr. Trina Read on the show. Trina is a sexologist, and we're going to get into that a little bit more in the conversation. But what she does is she helps women in long-term relationships thrive after the honeymoon stage is over. Such important work, Trina.
Thank you.
Trina is an award-winning and best-selling author. She's an international award-winning speaker. She's been interviewed by over 1,000 media and podcast outlets worldwide. And I really invite you to check out her podcast, which is called Sensational Sex Podcast. She has an award-winning book called The Sex Course, and she also has a YouTube channel. So we are going to connect all those links in the show notes for you to follow and learn more about Trina. But Trina, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. I am a big fan of you and what you're doing. I've been to your networking group, and it's unlike other networking groups that you will go to. It's just a really interesting space, and I'll just do a really quick share. The last time I was at your networking event, you had us do a pre-meditation thing, which is super groovy, and it's like unlike anything I'd been to before. But in that moment where we went, you took us through this meditation. I saw myself in 2025 swinging from success to success, and I was like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" And I'm pretty sure I would not have had that if I wouldn't have went to your networking function. So I just want to say thank you for that unusual and interesting way to draw things out of people. It was amazing.
Well, thanks you for sharing that. And yeah, for any female entrepreneurs out there, I do hold a group that's monthly. And again, I'll connect the information in the show notes. But just wanted to turn it over to you, Trina. If you could describe, I know you've had a lot of, new chapters in your life over the years, obviously, as we all have, but maybe describe one that's been recent for you, a key event where you really made a decision in your life to start a new chapter.
Well, once I had my kids 15 years ago, I tried to be a full-time worker and a full-time mom, and found myself burnt out. And so I went full on burnout. And for many years, I just wandered, and I felt it was a really awful feeling. And I wasn't really putting any time into being a sexologist. I was mostly focused on being a parent, and I was going to walk away from this. I'm like, you know what? It's just not worth it. I just can't get traction anywhere, and I'm just going to walk away from it. And two things happened. First of all, I started listening to Denise Duffield-Thomas, who does she's a finance person, and she talks about financial mindset, because I was looking for ways to start making income because I wasn't making income as a sexologist. And this idea of mindset just completely was gobsmacked me. It was like, oh my gosh, this is the missing piece for women's sexuality. Like, having a positive sexual mindset is the missing piece for women's sexuality. So that was number one. And number two, a lady in Calgary here, she runs a woman's, it's called the Camp Hoo Ha. And she said, we've heard about you, Trina. We heard you're an amazing speaker. Can you please come speak to us? And I was like, no, I'm sorry. That chapter of my life is done, but thank you. She was like, please, please, please. And I'm like, okay, I'll go and I'll do this talk. Right. So there was 250 women there, completely lost their minds. Like, it was just so much fun. And I was reminded why I'm doing this. So those two things came together, and suddenly it was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I was re-inspired, and like, it seems so random, but I feel like if you are paying attention and you are intentional, these things are crystal clear to you.
Thanks for sharing that. That's such a great story and something that I've been really talking about a lot lately is how, like what you said, when you're aware of these things and you know you want to make a change in your life, like you know something's not working, but you're like, I don't really know what it is that's not working and I don't know how to make it work. When you say that, God or the universe sends you people and ideas and opportunities to tap back into that. And that's exactly what happened to you. Like he sent this person, these people into your life to give you those aha moments, and then you took action on them and got re-inspired.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I've had these moments in my life. They haven't happened often where, when I decided to leave corporate Canada and become a sexologist, it was just so radical. Like it was 25 years ago, right? Like it was just unheard of, right? And to just drop everything and go down to San Francisco and, take my graduate schooling down there. And, my dad was sending me clippings of homeless people, saying, you're just it's just not gonna work. But I know for sure that when you are meant to do something, the path just the red carpet just unfolds and your path is given to you. And I can't explain it any more clearer than that, but that is the absolute truth. And I have experienced this a few times in my life, and I feel like 2025 is one of those. The red carpet is rolling out for me now, and I'm just like, okay, it's finally happening again.
Awesome.
Yay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel, or have you felt when those opportunities come up for you, have you ever felt fear or doubt or resistance? And obviously you're getting, negative feedback from other people and all this stuff. Like, how do you go through that?
It's really interesting you asked that question because I just read a blog from this lady who's very well established in her niche. And she said, as you get older, it's not about um, your abilities, because you're confident in your abilities. What you have to get over is the self-doubt you have in yourself because you're older. And like right now I'm fighting against the self-doubt I have about like, so I know that I am capable, but it's the self-doubt inside. And you think, well, my goodness, like how could you have self-doubt? Well, I've been out of this for 10, 15 years. So, like I have to relearn and redo and refigure this out. And there's a lot of chatter in the back of my head, saying, gosh, you've aged out. You're not good enough. Like you're 56 years old. And who do you think you are to try and start doing this again? Like there's all of that. So I know that I'm really good at my job, but it's the me that's stopping me right now.
So how are you overcoming that? Like, what are you doing to stop those negative voices in your head?
Well, luckily, I just from so 20 years ago, I was sort of a big deal. I was all over the media, I was everywhere. And I just learned a lot of skills back then that you just push through this, as a professional speaker. It doesn't matter how you feel. You just get on stage and you just do the work, right? And it's the same, like and so I developed these skills that, I'm terrified, but I still do it. And I don't die. So that's the great thing. I'm terrified and I don't die. and it
Yes,
usually tur- and it
exactly.
usually turns out okay. But I also just like, I know every person is different, but I just personally, the more I prepare, the easier it is. So like I'm always, making sure to read notes and have answers, and one of the reasons that I was such a popular guest is I always came on prepared and people would always ask me back. So, I think that's a good tip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, I mean, Elizabeth Gilbert writes about this that, the fear and the doubt never go away.
No,
And you need to kind of learn how to have them come along for the ride, but not be in the driver's seat. Like they're in the back seat, right? They're just kind of coming along for the ride, but you're not letting them take control. And I think that's what you're saying. It's like, yeah, I'm scared. There's things that terrify me, but I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm learning the
yeah.
skills of how to overcome that. And one of those skills is being prepared.
Yeah. And I also find that it's the anticipation, right? So once you start into it, it's like, oh, okay. I know how to do this, right? But it's the, oh my gosh, am I going to remember everything? Especially since I have menopause brain, right? Like that menopause brain, it's really added an extra layer of insecurity because I forget words. And as a speaker, it's like, how, it's like, that's my bread and butter. And I'm in the middle of something and it's
Right.
like,
Oh, it's a real thing. I know,
it's a
Trina.
thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah, I've got lots of stories about that. So, um, no, thanks for sharing that, and I really, really, I appreciate that. I think I want to jump into like, what do you do? Like, what is a sexologist? Because I think everyone's asking that that's listening to this.
Well, so a sexologist is like a biologist where it's an umbrella term, right? So there's many spokes to what a sexologist can be. So you can be a sex therapist, you can be a sex educator in schools with kids, like, so there's a lot of different things that you could be doing. I am not a therapist. I am not a counselor. And it's too bad because I would have made a lot of money doing that, but I'm just really, really bad at it. But what I'm really good at is educating women. So I'm a writer and I'm a speaker. And so I go out and I I talk to women and I do my best to have them figure out what works for them in the bedroom. So unfortunately, society has given men and women the wrong information about what sexually works for women. And so, men and women are doing their best with a broken framework. So I am going and I'm trying to say, okay, so here's what you actually need to do in order for women to have soul fulfilling, sexually satisfying sex, especially if you're in a long term relationship.
Right. Where do you think that broken framework comes from? Like, why do you think we have that in our society?
Well, I'm going to give a really quick history lesson. It's not going to be boring. So Freud in the 1908, he came out with this vaginal theory that only mature women are able to have an orgasm with vaginal intercourse. And that, for whatever reason, that theory stuck. So this idea of the only way a woman can have true pleasure is when something is in her vagina, a penis, a dildo, a finger going in, out, in, out, in, out. That's what's going to give her a maximum amount of satisfaction. And we still see that today. So, and if you watch a movie, I always know it's a male producer because, the couple goes to have sex. The minute he enters her, she's like, oh my God. She's like, and throws a passion. And I'm like, my poor husband, I'm like, that's not how it works. That's not what it is. This is, anyways, but I always know it's a male producer because that's what men think it is. And then in the 1950s, Masters and Johnson came out and declared the clitoris was the main way for women to experience pleasure. And unfortunately, because of that, people got on the she comes first bandwagon. And like, it's just like the saddest thing because the she comes first ideology has really set women up for failure because women who are in a long-term relationship, the majority of them experience what's called a delayed sexual response, meaning that when sex is initiated, she will not feel like having sex. And in fact, it's going to take her a moment, like 15 to 20 minutes, to move from her mind into her body. So this idea that, she comes first, she's got 5 minutes where she's getting some clitoral stimulation. And if she doesn't get that, to the orgasm, oh, well, it's on to the main event, which is her partner's orgasm, right? So if this is played out way too often, it becomes a sex rut, but also women think, why do I want to have sex when ultimately it's just going to be about me making sure that his pleasure is met. And the thing that's stopping women, it's taken me like 20 years to figure this stuff out. But the reason women, they are unhappy with their sex life is because they cannot ask for the sex that they want. And so when we were at this networking function, so Vera and I were at a networking function last week, I ran into a couple women that said, sex isn't satisfying me anymore, but I don't know what I want. And I think it's this combination of women don't know that she has to ask for something different other than having an orgasm. And if she did ask for something, what would that something be? And so men and women are stuck. Like, I think if this information was disseminated to men and women, they'd be like, okay, got it, right? But my experience in this job, and I think this is so interesting, my experience in this job is, if I were to go onto Facebook or CBC. So I used to have a radio column on CBC. And so if I was to go on CBC or Facebook and I was to talk about sexual dysfunction, like painful sex or rape, or something, like just terrible things. If I was talking about a sexual dysfunction, I could talk till I'm blue in the face on these platforms. However, when I start talking about women's sexual pleasure, I'm censored. Which, don't you think that's interesting? And not only that, but when we talk about women's sexual pleasure in the construct of a male-centric way, which is the penis vagina sex, it blows up on YouTube. It blows up on Facebook. And somehow it gets past the censors. However, when I talk about sex the way women want to have sex, that it gets nothing. So there's no response to women-centered women's sexuality. It's all about how to please the man, and men, for example, if I was to put up a YouTube of, how to give her mind-blowing orgasms, with this finger technique, it would be like, like thousands and thousands and thousands of views. But if I go, you know what, man, she needs sensuality, it's like, crickets in the background, because, that's not how people think sex is supposed to be. They think sex is supposed to be orgasm focused. She comes first. That's the sexual framework that is broken. And the thing is, the more pressure women feel to orgasm, the less chances she will be able to orgasm. So that's the problem.
Wow. And that is really interesting. And the really interesting sort of through line of that is, what do women want? And in my line of work, which has nothing to do with sex, although there's
I think it does.
it touches it, right?
I think it's all interconnected,
Yeah,
really.
100%. Everything's interconnected. Like, whether you're talking about your career or your relationship or your sex life or your health, like, it is all interrelated. But I ask that question all the time of my clients and people that I work with, is, what do you want? And the interesting thing is that a lot of women don't know. They've never been asked that question. They've never given themselves the permission to actually think about that question. Never mind saying out loud and articulating what it is that you want. And I think in an intimate setting, like with something that's a sex related setting, that makes it even more challenging, because all of a sudden there's a lot of taboos and stigma and all these things. We shouldn't be talking about this, or this is weird, or whatever people think. So that's really interesting about that question. Like, what do you want? And I think you just asking that maybe will open up some women's minds around, like, what is it that I actually want?
Well, so there's two things to this, right? So in my research, it's that women don't ask for what she wants. And then the second thing is, she is unable to lean into the pleasure that she asked for. So women feel a lot of resistance to leaning into her sensual power, her sexuality, like it's almost too much for women to be able to experience fully her sexual being. And so that's, unfortunately, her being able to lean into her pleasure is a learned skill that does take a little bit of time and practice for her to feel completely comfortable doing. And just to your previous point, the thing I always find so ironic and sad is that men want to please us. If you have a male partner, if you have a female partner, she wants to please you too. So our partners want to please us. And the thing your male partner wants you to do is tell them what you want. Like, it's just, so they want this, they're asking for it. And so I just feel like we're doing them a solid when we actually say, hey, you know what? I like it when you kiss me here. I like it when you massage me. I want us to have time where, we take a bath, and after the bath, it's not intercourse. It's just a bath. Like you set your boundaries to say, I just want to start having what Dr. Ian Kerner calls erotic threads. Like we're simmering in the week. We're creating these erotic threads, and that's really getting me juiced up and good to go. And when you have that emotional intimacy, those erotic threads, that simmering, I promise you, you're going to like run to the bedroom. Like you're going to be the one going, hey, yeah, I want this. This is nurturing my needs. This is satiating my soul. This is doing like, it's going to be a complete 180 to what a lot of women experience in long-term relationships.
Mhm. What have been some of the things that you women experience, like once they go through your course and learn about, okay, A, what do I want? B, how do I communicate this to my partner? Like, what has been the outcome of that for them?
I feel like it's, I think it's just, I think what I do best is I just allow couples to start communicating. So I'm not blaming men and I'm not blaming women. I'm just saying, hey, this is the situation. We're all in it. We're just trying to figure it out. And because I'm not trying to judge people, or I'm just trying to accommodate people, what I do best is start a conversation. So the biggest feedback I get is, we finally started talking about this, and you know what, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. So for example, I'm just doing YouTube videos on menopause and painful sex, how your body, your vaginal canal and your vulva, they atrophy, so you can experience clitoral atrophy, vaginal atrophy. It's so unsexy, and yet so many women just don't talk about this, and they push through painful sex, or they stop having sex altogether because they just don't know how to bring this up with their partner. And this is very treatable. It's like up to 85% of women will experience vaginal dryness and vaginal atrophy. 85%, because every single woman goes through menopause, right? So chances are you are going to have this, and this is a good conversation to have. And so the feedback I get from women is, when I had that conversation with my partner, that sex is sometimes uncomfortable and painful, they were more than accommodating. They wanted to figure this out with me. We started working as a team. So, instead of two people trying to not talk to each other, all of a sudden they're working as a team around and figuring this out. And, there's a lot of great solutions if you are experiencing painful intercourse.
Well, and I can only imagine that this not only strengthens your sex life, but obviously strengthens your relationship,
Mhm.
probably builds up confidence in women, all the things, right? It's impacting your mental health, your physical well-being. Like, I think
You think
this is
no,
an
yeah,
important conversation,
you
right?
think it's just having intercourse, but it's not. It's like how you feel about yourself, how sexy you feel. Like when you are, I don't know if you've had the experience, but like I've had the experience where it's been a moment where my husband and I had sex, and then we connected, and it was almost like the door opened and all the bad feelings and all those things went out the door, and we were back to being us again, and it was just a really good connection. And I feel like there are just a few things in life that really mean something, and being connected to another human being. Like you can have emotional intimacy without your partner, without having sex, but having sex just makes it that much better, that much juicier. And when you can bring in what you want into this sex, what women, so I think what men want from sex and what women want from sex are extremely complementary. And when you put these two things together, that's when you get mind blowing sex. That's when it starts to be really interesting. And everybody is just like so happy. And you are like soulfully connected to this person that you've chosen to be with for many years. So instead of just being roommates, you are now like connected. And I feel like that's probably the most powerful feeling that you can have.
Wow, that's so amazing. I love what you're doing and I love the impact that you're having.
Thank
What
you.
is something that you're working on this year? Like you said, hey, I'm seeing some success, different successes for me this year with the red carpet being rolled out for me. What is something that you're working on that you want to share with everyone?
Well, so really quickly, 20 years ago when I was really in the media, like there was a way to get yourself out there, which was on TV shows and, podcasts had just started. Like, so I learned this way of getting my brand out there. And now I've had to relearn how to do this because that's not how it works anymore. So now I've started a YouTube channel and it's getting traction. And it's so interesting because I'm posting on Instagram and I'm posting on Facebook and I'm posting but nothing is getting traction for me, but Facebook is. And so I feel like Facebook for me, it's around the world, it's worldwide. And I can really start doing some serious sex education to people around the world. So that's what I'm really focused on right now. And, you know, uh, obviously selling my books and I've got programs, as every speaker does. And, so those are always, I'm building the YouTube channel to be able to sell these things that I have to sell.
Yeah, awesome. Well, like I said, we're going to connect the YouTube channel so everyone can go follow Dr.
Yeah,
Trina.
please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like right
Yeah.
now it's only men really who are watching my YouTube channel.
Oh my gosh, we got to get
I
more
need
women. We got
I
to have
need
this
women.
conversation. This is an important conversation,
I
right?
know.
Because especially with, the work that you and I do, we're working with a lot with midlife women. We're going through this perimenopause, menopause. We're going through other things in our life like, wow, what's the next thing for me? I'm turning 50 or whatever age that you're turning and all of a sudden these doubts or these questions start coming up and this is all part of it. So follow Dr. Trina and get on her YouTube channel. What words of wisdom would you like to share with women, Trina, who are going through their own sort of recreation, reinvention of themselves, or thinking about creating a new chapter for themselves? Like, what would you like to tell them?
I just think when you have the gonads to step outside your comfort zone and actually just go for it. I know so many women, and you probably do too, Vera. I know so many women who want to, who are waiting to, and they just never take that step. And it's terrifying. It really is. And it's a lot of work. But suddenly you have a very interesting life. And I feel like having a really interesting life, because, when I was in my burnt out period, I was just getting through the day and my life was not interesting. It was safe and it was secure, but it wasn't interesting. And so now I'm pushing myself way outside my comfort zone, and I feel like suddenly I've got a new lease on life. So I'm 56 years old. And you know what? I don't feel 56 years old. I feel like back to 20. And I feel like that's because I'm really pushing myself to, you know, reach for the things that really push me out of my comfort zone. And I know that that's hard, especially for women who just don't like, they haven't had the kind of successes that I have. Like I know that I can do this. And I know that it's hard if you don't have that like in the back of your head. It's a little more difficult. But honestly, if you just step outside your comfort zone, your life is going to get so much more interesting.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Trina. This has been amazing. We could probably talk about this for hours and hours, and maybe I'll have you back on the podcast at some point in time. But thank you so much
Anytime.
for sharing, your words of wisdom, your passion. I love what you're doing in the world. It's so important, and you're creating this ripple of positive impact and helping women gain confidence. You're helping rebuild relationships, and for me, that's really, really important. And I'm so grateful that you're part of my circle and part of my community. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm happy we met. Like this has been a really wonderful relationship. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We'll talk to you soon. And thanks everyone for listening. Bye for now.